Some stories don't begin with a bang. They begin with a bark. A tired dog, and mostly forgotten, started it all. It was a Sunday. Quiet, the kind of day small towns cherish like family heirlooms. But in the attic of the Ellsworth farmhouse, something waited, sealed tight in a trunk, wrapped in dust and time. When the old kennel barked once, then again, with a low, guttural edge, it wasn't just noise. It was a warning, a scream disguised in for an instinct. And by the time anyone listened, the damage was already done. If you enjoy grounded, emotionally intense thrillers that take their time before they strike, stick around. You might want to subscribe. Quiet stories like this tend to echo loudest when they're over. The wind carried the scent of rain, though none had fallen. Just that heavy, pre-storm weight in the air that made folks in towns like Barrow Creek check their gutters and bring in their laundry early. The kind of stillness that felt off, like nature was holding its breath. No one paid it much mind that morning, except for the dog. His name was Roscoe, a retired canine, 10 years old and graying around the muzzle. He limped when he walked and didn't hear so well these days. Mostly slept, but when he barked, people still listened, if not out of respect, then out of memory. Roscoe had found a missing boy in the woods once, 5 years back. He'd taken down a fugitive without orders, bit right through the guy's forearm while his partner was still climbing out a cruiser. He'd earned his keep. Now he belonged to Hank Ellsworth. Late 50s, slow-spoken, big hands like meat hooks. Used to run the hardware store before it burned down. Didn't rebuild. Folks whispered it wasn't just fire damage. It was debt, maybe worse. Hank lived alone now, in the old family farmhouse off County Road 12, about 3 miles from town, surrounded by yellowing cornfields and a line of evergreens that looked black after sundown. He'd inherited the place after his sister died. Didn't say much about her, except she was never quite right in the head. That Sunday morning, Hank was out back splitting logs. Roscoe lay on the porch, panting in the heat. Just a creak in the wind, a crow overhead, the dull thunk of the axe. Ordinary, peaceful, until Roscoe stood up. Not slowly. He shot to his feet, like something had grabbed him from under the floorboards. His ears, one half torn from a fight long ago, tilted sharply. He stared at the second-floor window, the attic, and then he growled, low, ugly, the kind of sound dogs don't make unless something's wrong. His teeth showed. His whole body stiffened. Barked once. Then again. Short, sharp explosions. Not playful. Not alert. Angry. Frightened. Hank turned. Wiped sweat from his brow with the back of his hand. What is it, boy? Roscoe didn't move. Just kept barking up at the window. Now pacing the porch. Hackles up like he was sniffing a ghost. The window was shut. Curtain half torn. Sun filtering through dust. The attic hadn't been opened in months. Barrow Creek had a population just under 3,000. The kind of place with a single blinking traffic light. A diner that served meatloaf every Thursday. And a bar called Lucky's that no one felt particularly lucky in. Everybody knew everybody, or thought they did. Sheriff Dana McClure knew Hank. Had arrested him once, years back, for drunk and disorderly, but let him off easy. War veteran. Quiet. Bitter. Maybe. But not dangerous. She got the call that afternoon. It wasn't Hank who called. It was Ruth from the pharmacy. Said she'd driven out to drop off his blood pressure meds. He'd missed 2 pickups. Found him on the porch with the dog barking bloody murder, and Hank just staring at the attic window, like it might blink. When Dana arrived, Hank was sitting on the porch swing, a beer untouched in his hand. Roscoe had stopped barking, but still wouldn't lie down. He circled the front step, tail stiff, nose pointed to the sky. Dana stepped out of the cruiser. Hey, Hank. He didn't look at her. Just said, he smells something in the attic. Dana adjusted her belt, glanced at the weather-worn siding of the house. A raccoon, maybe? I sealed it up tight. After Marnie passed. Marnie was his sister. Dana felt the prickle of discomfort crawl up her neck. Still, Animals find ways. Want me to take a look? He didn't answer, just nodded, then said quietly, "You'll want your gun." The stairs creaked like they remembered screams. Dana took them slow. Dust floated to the shaft of sunlight coming from the attic door above. She could hear Roscoe growling again, low and guttural from downstairs. The door was latched but not locked. She opened it. Heat slapped her first. Stale dead air, thick with the scent of mildew and something else. Coppery. Sweet. A scent that didn't belong in a place with no plumbing. Dana stepped in. The floorboards groaned under her boots. The attic was cluttered with the usual. Boxes of yellowed books, old furniture under sheets, stacks of her brother's hunting magazines. And in the far corner, a trunk, large, iron-cornered, military issue, padlock rusted shut. She walked toward it, one hand on her holster. There was a dent in the floor near the trunk, as though someone had dragged something heavy. And on the wall behind it, marks. Scratches, faint but deliberate, like fingernails. She crouched, ran her hand over the trunk. It was warm, unnaturally warm. She stood, took a step back. From behind her came a soft click. She turned, hand on her gun. Nothing. Then she heard Roscoe bark again, this time sharp and frantic. The front door slammed downstairs, and Hank began screaming. By the time Dana got down the stairs, Hank was on the kitchen floor, curled up, holding his head like something was inside it, screaming words that didn't make sense. She lied. She lied about the children. It wasn't supposed to. Oh, God, the eyes. Roscoe stood between Hank and Dana, barking, snarling, protecting, or warning. The morning after Hank Ellsworth was hauled off screaming about eyes, Barrow Creek woke up like nothing happened. Kids rode their bikes past the churchyard. The bakery opened at 7 sharp. Locals gathered at Lucky's by lunch to sip weak coffee and swap the usual gossip. Someone's cousin got arrested for stealing diesel from the quarry. Old man Trapper hit a deer with his truck. Again, no one talked about Hank, but they were thinking about him. Because in a town like Barrow Creek, when a man starts screaming about children in cursed trunks, it echoes, quietly, in the backs of people's minds, especially the older ones, especially those who remembered Marnie Ellsworth. And they did remember her. Dana McClure sat in her cruiser parked outside the farmhouse, the windows down. Her hands were on the wheel, unmoving. The fields around her were silent, except for the whir of locusts and the distant flap of crows. She hadn't slept much. The image of that trunk kept returning. How it radiated warmth in a cold, sealed room. How Roscoe, an old dog with dead eyes and aching hips, had barked like the devil himself was crouched behind the wood and rusted iron. And those scratches on the wall, not random, parallel, etched with purpose, like someone had been trying to count the days. She opened the door, stepped out. The house loomed in front of her, sun-bleached and skeletal. The porch boards groaned under her boots as she walked up. The screen door hung crooked, slapping against its frame in the wind. She hadn't gotten a warrant yet, but she didn't need one. Not yet. Technically, she was here for the dog. Roscoe had bitten an EMT. Protocol. But she knew she wasn't here for Roscoe. She was here for the trunk. She found Roscoe chained to a porch post, muzzle stained with saliva, eyes red. He didn't bark when she approached, just stared up at her, watchful, silent. "I'm not here to hurt you," Dana muttered, unclipping the chain. "Just want to look." He didn't resist, didn't follow her either. He just sat, waiting, as if he knew what was coming. The attic was colder today. Dana noticed it the second she cracked the door. Not warm like yesterday. Cold. The kind of cold that seemed to live inside your bones, not just on your skin. And the air smelled worse now. Rotting wood, sauerkraut, and something faintly metallic, like blood left too long in the sun. The trunk sat in the same place. The dust around it was disturbed now, scattered. Dana saw faint tracks, something small. Clawed. Maybe a raccoon after all. But she didn't believe that. Not anymore. She approached slowly, boots crunching on grit. The padlock was old, but not broken, still sealed. She knelt, touched the trunk's lid. It was cold, but not dead, alive in a way she couldn't explain. Like the wood had memory, like it remembered being open before. She stood again, looked around, then saw the photograph. It was curled at the edges, tucked behind a stack of rotting magazines. She reached for it. It showed a group of children, black and white, faded, 6 kids standing in a row, arms at their sides, faces blank, all except the girl in the middle, Marnie, young, maybe 12. She stared into the camera like she knew something the others didn't. Her eyes were too wide, and her smile, thin, unnatural, like it had been practiced. Something about the other children unsettled Dana. Their eyes looked off, all of them, the pupils smudged, as if the film itself had twisted. She flipped it over. On the back, in faded pen, Class of 72, the Barn Kids. Dana froze. She knew that name. In Barrow Creek folklore, there were whispers about the barn. A youth home, back before social services had any teeth. Run down, state-funded. Kids with no parents, no names, no voices. The kind of place everyone pretended didn't exist. They'd torn it down in the 80s. Fire, they said, but the stories never left. Whispers of screaming at night, of disappearances, of kids punished too harshly, beaten, locked away, never seen again. And always, Marnie's name had been part of it. She'd been a resident. Then, for a short while, a helper. Then she vanished in the public, until Hank brought her back home, a thin shadow of a woman who barely spoke. Now she was dead, and the trunk remained. Dana took the photo and left the attic. Something had changed in the air. She called Doc Latham, the town's unofficial historian and a former schoolteacher. He answered after 3 rings, his voice sharp with nicotine and suspicion. Sheriff. Document. You remember the barn? Long silence. Then, bad place. Not supposed to talk about it. You remember a girl named Marnie Ellsworth? Another pause. She was there. Smart one. Kept to herself. Left before the fire. What about the Barn Kids? Ever hear that name? Doc cleared his throat. Used to be 6 of them. State called it a pilot program. Intensive care for high-risk or sensitive cases. Meaning, kids that saw things, heard things, said things they shouldn't. One claimed she could hear the dead. Another drew pictures of people who hadn't died yet. Creepy stuff. Town wanted the place gone. And Marnie, she said she could talk to shadows. Dana's blood chilled. Shadows. Not hers. Others. Doc went quiet for a long time. Then he said softly, "You opened something, didn't you?" "No," Dana replied. "Not yet." "Don't." That night, Roscoe howled. Neighbors called it in around 2 a.m. Said it didn't sound like barking. Said it sounded like grief. Like a dog mourning something not yet lost. When Dana drove back out, the house was dark. Roscoe was gone. His chain snapped. The attic window was open, and on the front porch sat the photograph. But the faces had changed. Marnie was gone. In her place, something else. A figure, blurred. All black, all wrong. And in the bottom right corner, written in smudged ash, "We're still waiting." Sheriff Dana McClure didn't sleep that night. She didn't even try. She sat at her kitchen table with a photograph between her fingers and a half-finished bottle of whiskey in front of her, heart pounding in quiet, steady revolt. The faces on the photo, those 6 pale children, watched her from the warped grain of the paper. Their expressions weren't blank anymore. They were expectant, like they were waiting for her to understand something she couldn't yet see. Marnie was gone from the center of the photo, but that wasn't what chilled Dana to the bone. It was the black figure in her place, shadow-shaped, no face, no body, but there was presence, like someone had drawn fear and filled it with ink. And those words were still waiting. By morning, Roscoe still hadn't turned up. Dana called Hank at the psych ward, but he wasn't talking anymore. Doctors said he was catatonic. Just sat in a chair all day with his hands clenched like he was still holding something. They'd had to sedate him twice. He keeps muttering one word, The attending said over the line, "Keep saying underneath," over and over, like a chant. Dana wrote it down. Underneath, whatever it meant, it felt like a direction or a warning. She pulled out the case file she'd been building, hastily stapled reports, the old photo, a rough sketch of the trunk's placement in the attic, the scratches on the wall. Parallel, 5 tall, 1 short, 6 children. One of them had been Marnie. Now only 5 remained in the photo. She didn't want to believe what that meant. By mid-afternoon, Barrow Creek's silence had changed. It wasn't the comforting small-town quiet anymore. It was the stillness of a place holding its breath, waiting. Then a call came in from Doris Greeley, the church secretary. She was hysterical. "Something's happened to Father Keyes," she cried. "He's locked himself in the sanctuary. He's painting." Painting. Dana echoed. "On the walls. With ash. He won't let anyone in." Dana was there in 10 minutes. The church door stood open, but inside, the sanctuary was dark. Candles had been lit, hundreds of them, lining the aisle like some twisted vigil. The smell hit her first, wax, sweat, and something darker, charcoal and singed wood. Father Keyes had always been a quiet man, early 60s, stern but fair, a former seminary professor from upstate, not the kind of man who scribbled madness on sacred walls. But that's exactly what he was doing. He stood in front of the altar, shirtless, black ash smeared across his arms. He was muttering in Latin, words that Dana didn't recognize, but her skin crawled at the rhythm of them. The walls behind him were covered in symbols, circles, eyes, sharp teeth, all drawn in sweeping, frantic strokes. Dana stepped forward. "Father Keyes." He didn't stop. "Father." He turned. His eyes were wrong. They were dilated too wide, pupils swallowing the blue. And when he smiled, it was the same thin, unnatural smile Marnie had worn in the photo. "You brought them back," he said softly. Dana felt the cold seep into her bones. "Brought who back?" He pointed a blackened finger at her chest. "They never left." Then he collapsed. They sedated him, too. And when they brought in a professional cleaning crew to scrub the walls, one of them quit on the spot, said the paint wouldn't come off, even with solvents. It wasn't paint, he insisted. It was soot, burned from the inside of something. And when Dana asked for the photos taken at the scene, she noticed something strange. In every frame, tucked in the corners of the symbols, were shadows, subtle, human-shaped, watching. That night, Dana locked her doors, shut every window, and sat with her service pistol resting on the table. She pulled up the town archives, dug deep. In 1972, there had been 6 children reported as wards of the barn. Only 3 were ever adopted. 2 were transferred to juvenile care. 1 disappeared. That missing child had no name listed, no photo, only a note in the margin, removed from records by request. C. M. Ellsworth. She stared at the line until her eyes blurred. Marnie had erased someone. At 1:47 a.m., her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. There were 7. No contact info. No return number. The message vanished a second later. Dana dropped the phone. She turned, scanning the room. The windows were fogged from the inside. All of them, as if someone had breathed on the glass. A handprint appeared on one. Then another, child-sized, pale. She stood, heart thudding. Her lights flickered, then went out, and in the pitch black of her kitchen, the silence broke, not with a bang, but a single bark. "Roscoe!" She grabbed her flashlight and stepped out into the night. Dana grabbed the radio on her shoulder. "Dispatch! I need medical at the Ellsworth place. Possible mental breakdown. And bring animal control. Something's off with the dog." She knelt beside Hank. "Hank, what children? What's in the attic?" He opened his eyes. Wet, bloodshot, terrified. "Don't open the trunk," he whispered. "You'll let it out." Across town, the lights flickered at St. Augustine's Church. An hour later, 2 paramedics loaded Hank into the ambulance, still murmuring about eyes in the dark. Roscoe refused to be leashed. Bit one of the responders. Sheriff Dana had no choice but to chain him in the backyard, where he barked toward the attic all night long. The trunk remained unopened, but that wouldn't last. Not in Barrow Creek. Secrets never stayed buried long, especially not the kind that barked back. Roscoe stood at the edge of her lawn, facing the tree line, completely still, not barking now, waiting. His ears twitched. His tail stayed low. Behind him, in the shadows between the trees, something moved. Dana raised her light. The beam cut through leaves, drifted across bark, and landed on something that didn't belong. A child's shoe, old, mud-caked, and beside it, scratches in the dirt. Claw-like, Roscoe whined, then took off into the woods. Dana followed. The trail led them past the quarry, down into the old creek bed, dried up for years. Trees stood in brittle lines like silent witnesses. Roscoe stopped near an old pump house. Wooden, rotting, long abandoned. Dana's light passed across the door. More symbols. The same ones Father Keys had drawn in ash, but these were carved into the wood. Deep, angry gashes. A message had been scratched into the frame in blocky, childlike letters. We were buried but not gone. Roscoe growled. The door creaked open by itself. Dana raised her pistol, stepped inside. The air was freezing, a deep, unnatural cold. Her breath came in clouds. Her flashlight flickered again. In the center of the room sat a chair. Strapped to it, bones. Small, childlike, wrapped in shredded cloth that might once have been pajamas. On the wall behind it, drawn in what looked like old blood, she fed US to it. Dana stepped back, mouth dry. Roscoe barked behind her. Then she saw it, carved in the back of the child's skull. An eye, open, watching, not human. The truth hit her like a blow. Marnie didn't just talk to shadows. She gave them something, and in return, they stayed. The morning after she found the bones, Dana stood in front of the pump house, her hands shaking as she tried to light a cigarette. She hadn't smoked in over a decade, not since her mother's funeral. But the urge now was something primal. It wasn't just the skeleton. It was the words on the wall, the eye carved into the skull, the darkness in that room, how it felt like it breathed, like it watched her. Roscoe sat beside her, unusually still, his eyes fixed on the tree line like something was moving out there, something that hadn't quite left. When she finally lit the cigarette, the smoke curled upward into the stale morning air like an offering. The town was silent. Even the birds didn't sing. The bones were collected by a state forensics team out of Bismarck. They said it would take weeks to run DNA. But Dana already knew what they'd find. A seventh child, the one Marnie erased. No name, no record, just a victim, swallowed by something older than anyone had realized. And maybe not just one. There was a pattern forming, and she could see it now, if she let herself. The 6 kids, the barn, the sealed trunk, the missing faces in the photo, the messages scratched into walls, whispered into minds. Roscoe's unnatural awareness. Whatever had been fed was not done feeding. Dana went back to the farmhouse that evening. The trunk was still there, untouched, but the attic felt different, like the room had been stretched, pulled tighter, the corners darker than they should be. The photograph was still on the floor, but now 4 faces were missing, and something had changed in the figure at the center. It wasn't shadow anymore. It was taking shape. Back in town, people had started talking again, not about Hank or the church, but about what they were seeing. Mrs. Carver down on Pine said she woke up to find her dead husband sitting in her living room chair, staring at the wall, his skin thin and papery, his eyes hollow. The postmaster's son claimed he'd seen a little girl outside his bedroom window, said she had no lips, said she whispered something to him in a voice that wasn't hers. A group of teens tried to break into the abandoned gym and found the walls wet, not with water, but with condensation from inside and writing scrawled in it. She opened the door. The town wasn't just haunted. It was remembering. Dana pulled the files again. Every record she could find on the barn, Marnie, and the other kids. It was thin, too thin. Most of the paperwork was lost in the fire. which made sense, except the fire only burned the east wing, not the records room. Someone had removed the documents. Deliberately, she drove to Doc Latham's place. He opened the door in a bathrobe, eyes sunken, a revolver in his hand. "They're coming back," he muttered. "I can feel them." "I need to know what Marnie did," Dana said. Doc hesitated, then stepped aside. The living room looked like a bunker. Books piled in stacks, blackout curtains on every window. Candles burned in all corners. Doc poured 2 whiskeys, hands trembling. "She was always strange," he said. "Smart, but not right. What did she do at the barn?" They called it sensitivity training, but it was darker than that. Marnie could get into the other kids' heads, made them see things, made them remember things they didn't want to remember. Like what? He hesitated. Names, places, a door in the basement no one ever opened. Dana leaned in. What door? There was a room underneath the barn, not on the blueprints. Some called it the Red Room. Some kids said they were taken there when they misbehaved, but only once. Why only once? Doc's voice cracked. They never came back the same. One boy, he gouged out his own eyes with a spoon a week later, said the shadows followed him out. Jesus. Marnie never went in, but she talked to whatever was inside, said it needed something, said she made a deal. What kind of deal? Doc stared at the candle flame. To protect herself, her brother, said she'd feed it as long as it stayed quiet. Dana felt the pieces click. Marnie fed it, and now she was gone, which meant the deal was over. That night, Dana walked Roscoe down County Road, 12 under a bleeding red sky. The clouds were wrong. Too low, too fast. The cornfields around the farmhouse swayed without wind. Roscoe stopped suddenly and growled. Dana looked ahead. The attic window was glowing, a dim, reddish light pulsing behind the curtains like a dying heartbeat. She pulled her weapon, slowly. "I don't think we have a choice anymore, boy." Roscoe whined but didn't move. They went inside. The trunk was open, not blown open, not broken, just ajar. Inside, nothing, but the attic walls were covered in names. Scratched, etched, dug into the plaster with fingernails. Dana stepped closer. Each name was a child. Some she recognized, others not. But at the bottom was a new one. Dana McClure, freshly carved. She staggered back. Behind her, the attic door slammed shut. Then came the whisper, right behind her ear. She promised. She turned and fired, but the bullet went nowhere, just vanished into the wall. A shape moved in the far corner. Not a shadow, a figure, slender, watching. Its eyes were pits, black, wet, wide, and it smiled, just like Marnie. Roscoe lunged, teeth bared, growling like a demon. He threw himself at the thing, but passed through it like smoke. Then he yelped, fell, didn't move. Dana screamed his name and dropped to her knees, checking for a pulse. It was there, weak, but fading. The figure stepped closer. Its voice wasn't human. It was many voices. Children, adults, crying, screaming, laughing. "The deal is broken. What do you want?" Dana whispered. It tilted its head. What was promised? She dragged Roscoe down the stairs, heart pounding, weapon useless. The walls bled symbols. Photographs curled in on themselves. Faces vanished from them as she passed. Lights exploded in glass. The whole house groaned like it was coming alive. She burst outside into the cornfield, choking on smoke that wasn't there. Roscoe stirred. She clutched his fur, whispering promises she couldn't keep. Then, for just a moment, everything went silent. Not quiet, dead. From inside the attic came a sound. A child's voice. Singing. Slow. Off-key. Ring around the rosy. Dana wept, not because of the song, but because she knew it meant something worse than death was coming. Something that had waited decades. And now it was awake. Blood on the wallpaper. Morning never really came. The sun rose, but it didn't shine. What filtered over Barrow Creek was a gray, lifeless light, as though the sky had grown thin and sick. The air smelled metallic. People said their clocks were off. Digital numbers blinked 4:44 on repeat. Others heard scratching inside their walls. One man swore his dead mother called the house phone just to scream. The only thing louder than the quiet was a sense that something wrong had been unleashed. Sheriff Dana McClure hadn't changed her clothes in 2 days. She hadn't spoken to anyone outside of Doc Latham. Roscoe lay curled in a blanket at her feet, breathing shallow but steady. He hadn't barked since they left the attic, like he'd seen something that broke the part of him that warned. The photograph now lay on her kitchen table, curling at the corners. Only 2 children remained in it, and the black figure in the center had hands now. She drove to the site of the old barn, or what remained of it. The land had been sold years ago to a farming cooperative, but nothing ever grew there, not even weeds. Just cracked dirt and hunched trees twisted on themselves, roots gnarled like arthritic fingers. No building stood anymore, not visibly, but the ground held scars. Dana brought a shovel. By the second hour of digging, she hit stone, a foundation slab, cracked and blackened. She cleared it with her hands, nails bloodied, eyes wild. There, beneath a rotten layer of plywood, was a trapdoor, metal, sealed with a rusted chain. She stared at it for a long time. The air above it shimmered, like heat but cold. It breathed, and from beneath, Dana could hear them. Children, not crying, whispering. She didn't open it. Not yet. She needed to understand what had been fed, what bargain Marnie had made, and if there was still a way to pay that debt without losing more. She needed someone who had seen it up close. That meant Hank. The psych ward had locked Hank in a padded room. He hadn't spoken in days. Doctors had begun talking electroshock again. Dana flashed her badge and demanded 10 minutes alone. He was a ruin, scraggly beard, eyes dull, skin gray. But the second she said Marnie's name, he looked up. "You opened it," he croaked. "Didn't you?" "What is it, Hank?" His face twitched. "Not what? Who?" "You said she lied about the children. She said they were sick, special, but she didn't help them. She used them, fed them to the thing in the red room." He stood, barefoot, trembling. "She made me help." Dana's stomach turned. "Help how?" He began sobbing. She couldn't do it alone. The trunk was only the start. That's where she kept pieces of them. Hair, bones, teeth. Said it kept the thing quiet, like giving a dog scraps. But it always wanted more. Dana whispered, "And now it's loose." He nodded. She died before it got full. And now it's hungry again. She turned to leave. Hank screamed after her. "You can't kill it. You have to bargain. It listens if you bleed. That's the only language it understands." She drove home on instinct, every mile soaked in dread. The trees lining the road bent slightly inward now, branches dark and dripping with red sap that hadn't been there yesterday. Roscoe was waiting on the porch, tail wagging softly. Weak but alive. Something was shifting. The balance. She stepped inside and stopped cold. Every wall in her house had writing on it now. Not paint, not ash, blood. Thin, looping scrawl like a child handwriting. She turned in a slow circle, reading, "Tell the truth." She promised him life. "We only want it out." Then, "The red room opens tonight." She went to the basement, gun in hand. There, sitting in the center of the cement floor, was a trunk, not a replica. The same one, from the attic. Its lid stood wide open now. Inside, nothing. No contents. Just a spiral carved into the wood floor beneath it, blood dark and ancient. Dana stared at it, unable to move. A voice rose behind her. Small, female. "Are you the one who opens doors?" She turned. A girl stood at the foot of the stairs. Maybe 8, brown curls, no shoes. Her skin was wrong, pale, too still. Dana stepped forward slowly. "Who are you?" The girl tilted her head. "I'm what's left." Then she vanished. The power flickered out town-wide at 9:16 p.m. People came out of their houses. staring up at the sky. The moon had turned red. Not orange, not eclipse, blood red. It pulsed. Some claimed they saw faces in it. One man gouged out his eyes with bottle opener and screamed, "Now I see nothing." Others locked their doors. Others walked straight into the woods. The town lost 11 people that night, and in Dana's living room, the photo developed again. Only one child remained, and the black figure now wore her badge. She made her choice just after midnight. She would go back to the trapdoor. She would open it, not to end it, but to bargain. Because if Marnie could make a deal, so could she. Roscoe limped behind her the whole way. The field around the barn's ruin seemed deeper, wider, like the world was thinning there. She reached the door, unlatched the chain, swung it open, and climbed down. The air inside was liquid dark, not just black, wet as if light couldn't breathe here. Her boots echoed on stone steps. The red room waited below. She found it by feel. A chamber of rock, walls streaked with old blood, bones, so many bones. A child's drawing scratched into the stone. Stick figures around a dark circle, all holding hands. And in the center, the thing, not a monster, not a ghost, a presence. It didn't speak with words. It entered her. Memories not hers flooded in. Marnie, slicing a lock of hair from a boy's head as he slept. Hank, dragging something wrapped in burlap into the basement. Children screaming, calling for light that never came. The thing wanted memories. It fed on fear, trauma, pain. And Marnie had been its most loyal chef. Now it asked Dana, "What will you give?" She knelt in the dark, pulled out her pocket knife, and whispered, "Me?" Then she cut her palm. The blood hit the floor, and the chamber shuddered. A voice bloomed inside her. Feminine, cold, familiar, accepted. She woke on the forest floor at dawn. Roscoe curled beside her, warm. The air was clear again. The sky blue. Birdsong returned to Barrow Creek that morning. The town exhaled. Children played. The red room was gone. The trunk vanished. But Dana didn't return to work. She couldn't. Not after what she'd promised. And at night, when the town sleeps, she sometimes walks the woods, guarding the door, because she knows now what it costs to keep the peace, and how easy it is to open things that should stay closed. It had been 21 days since the red moon faded over Barrow Creek. In the diner, folks laughed again. Hunters joked about coyotes. Kids played flashlight tag under the sycamore trees. It was as if nothing had happened. Almost, because at night, after the lights dimmed and the shutters closed, something lingered in the stillness. A quiet space in the air, like a house missing one of its load-bearing walls. The kind of absence that hummed, low and constant. Dana McClure had vanished. No resignation. No goodbye. Just gone. She didn't pack. Left her badge, her boots, even her sidearm in the cruiser. Engine cold. Gas tank full. And the only thing on the seat? The photograph. Now entirely blank. Doc Latham was the first to notice the pattern. The kids who'd seen shadows in their bedrooms? They no longer remembered. Not just forgot. Erased. When asked, they looked confused and blinked like waking from a dream. The barn site? Bulldozed in a single night by an anonymous company that refused to give its name. Concrete was poured before dawn. No one claimed the work. The field now stood flat, silent, empty, but the birds still wouldn't fly over it. Roscoe stayed in town. No one knew how he survived. One morning he was just there, curled up outside the diner door, not barking, not growling, just waiting. He followed only one person now, Gracie Miller, 7 years old, hair in 2 braids, quiet as a ghost, smarter than she let on. Her mother died in a car accident a year before. Her father drank more than he spoke. The town pitied her. But Roscoe didn't. He followed Gracie like he remembered something about her the rest of them didn't. Like she had a scent no one else could smell. Sometimes, late at night, he'd sit outside her window and whine, not warning, not scared. Morning. One day, Gracie found a note tucked under her pillow. Childlike handwriting. Slanted. Uneven. It read, "We are not gone. We are only quiet." Underneath that, a small drawing, a spiral, just like the one carved beneath the trunk. Gracie folded it and placed it in her pocket. She didn't tell anyone, not even when, a week later, she found a spot behind the woodshed. Bare dirt, no grass. A perfect circle, the center of it still warm. And not even when Roscoe refused to go near it. In the woods behind the Ellsworth farmhouse, the attic window finally shattered. Nobody was there to hear it. No one but the crows. Inside, the dust had settled over everything. Everything except a single new object in the center of the attic floor. A child's shoe. Old, caked in dried blood. And beneath it, footprints. Leading nowhere, far from town, deep in the roots of any tree. The red room still existed. Just not in this world. Not anymore. It slept now, like some predator that had eaten well. But sleep does not mean death. And bargains never expire. Dana walks its edges. She doesn't breathe here, doesn't speak, but she remembers. Each day, she gives a little more of herself. Her memories, her warmth, her humanness. She does it willingly, because something in the dark agreed to wait. For now, and above her, in the world of the living, the children grow. Unknowing, smiling, safe, but when they sleep, sometimes they murmur strange things. Old rhymes, words no one taught them. And in one home, Gracie Miller whispers in her dreams. Round and round, the darkness turns. One by one, we all return. Epilogue, Barrow Creek, today. The town went on, but it was never quite the same. You won't find it on most maps anymore. No one knows exactly why it faded. Some say the soil went bad. Others say the water. But those who lived there long enough, they know. They remember the dog that barked at the attic window. They remember what was inside the trunk. And they know some doors once open never truly close. They just learn to wait.